Today I would like to show you how to make two forms. A small, like little creamer, and also a larger, not larger, but a medium-sized pitcher. And I want to talk to you about patterns. So you can see here I have some maybe 4-inch by maybe 10-inch paper that I'm going to fold in half to make my pattern for this ewer or creamer. And I'm simply going to, just like a Valentine heart, so I just folded it in half and making sure that the bottom is nice and flat first. I'm going to just cut a little, oops, that was a little rounded, but we can talk about that shape for this ewer. This is a little bit longer, and if I wanted to make something just a little bit different, you can kind of play around with this with just the regular paper. If I wanted one that's more angled, I could go in at an angle, and you can see I'm just building that spout right in to this, and that way this one would kind of come down at more of an angle, and you can see that spout is just built right in. Two different kinds of papers that I use, let me just move this, when I'm making slab projects. One is tar paper, and this would be for like a taller pitcher form. I like the tar paper because I can get it wet and stick it right to the clay. The other one that I like to use is a garden paper, and I can stick this on as well, but it has limited use, where the tar paper I can rinse off and reuse it, and I can keep reusing it until it really falls apart. And when we're talking about tar paper, we are talking about the roofing material. It just works really well with the clay, providing that you take it off at the appropriate times and that kind of stuff. The garden paper does break down a little bit more. Not as fast as like regular paper, but not as slow as the tar paper. All right, so I'm going to set these papers aside, and I'm going to roll out a slab and show you how to start a ewer, or not ewer, but a creamer, whichever you want to call it. And I'm going to wedge my clay. Make sure we don't have any air bubbles in there. And then I'm going to get out my rolling pin. And I always start in the center and work my way out. Sometimes I will gently toss the slab towards myself to elongate it. That works really well too, but it doesn't really take care of the middle as much, and that's where the thickness usually is. For smaller forms, like a short little creamer, I would need, I could have it be fairly thin because I would be able to control it rather easily. But for something a little bit taller, I would thicken it up to, around a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch, so that I could control it as it gets bigger. All right, so this looks like we're off to a good start. There's a couple little air bubbles that I'm going to poke. So if you see any air bubbles, they'll kind of stick up, you'll see them. Just kind of get rid of them. Also, if you want to texture your slab, now is a great time to do that. So if you wait until it's built, of course that's going to be more difficult. So I'm getting rid of the texture here. And then I'm going to, this time, use a textured rolling pin that I have. But you could use buttons or any found objects you have laying around. Might be fun to press in for a texture. I just bought these pastry rollers, and they're pretty cool. And they work well with clay. You can see that it leaves kind of a scar on the surface. So I'm going to lay that down, and I'm just going to get my paper just a little bit wet so it sticks. And I'm going to lay that down. I'm not pressing really hard, I'm just making sure it's stuck around the edges for sure. And I'm going to keep a piece of the clay for the bottom eventually. So I'm just taking my needle tool and tracing around that paper. All right. I'm just going to keep any extra pieces. Now this might have stuck down just a little bit, so I have to pick it up rather carefully. The other thing that I do right away is I'm going to use my damp sponge and I'm going to cradle that exposed area. And make sure that's nice and rounded. And now I'm going to set this aside. I do have one that has been setting up already. There it is. It's already been setting up. It's already starting to dry just a little bit, but it's ready for me to put together. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a bevel using my needle tool across the bottom. Got a little crazy there with it, but I think it'll be fine. And then on this side, I'm going to cut my bevel going one way. And on this side, I'm actually going to make it go a different way, the other way, the opposite. All right, now I'm going to search for my metal rib. Let's see. All right, so I've got my metal rib, and on those areas, I'm going to make some scores. And then I'm just going to take some slip from inside my bucket here. And that's just to make sure I don't trap any air. All right, now I'm going to come around. And you can see that with the way that I beveled those, they overlap just about perfectly. I can take off this paper because it can hold its shape now, and I can connect that seam. All right, here's my rib, and I'm just going to smooth that. And then the inside, I'm going to do my best to smooth it. It's not a very big hole. Now, this is what it looks like right now from the top down. It's all right, but it does need some shaping. And so for that spout, I'm really going to work that edge, holding my two fingers here and kind of pressing in here and working that spout area. And I'm going to kind of pinch that lip and come back in and round that out. Now it's looking much better, but I still need to put a bottom on. So I'm going to take an extra piece of clay that I had left over, and I'm going to put this over the top, and I'm going to trace around it. And remember, I beveled that bottom already. All right. Going to give it just a nice bevel here so it'll nestle right in there. Now I let that slab set up, so I took one that was already set up and used that. So you would want mine was setting up for about an hour, but you really have to watch it because it really depends on the humidity in your own house. So whether or not how quickly you can work with it. So do keep that in mind as you are putting together your own. Watch it, don't let it get too dry. If it gets too dry and you try to bend it, it's going to run into some troubles. I'm going to use a little bit of slip on that edge, And I'm going to come in with this. Make sure it's over the top. There we go. Let's see if it's stuck down at all. It appears to be stuck to the table. Just a little bit. I'll see if I can jiggle it off of there. There we go. And I'm going to work that in on that bottom. So there's other tools that you can buy to use to, like little rollers and things that you can use. But if you don't have those, you do not have to stress out. You can use the tools that you have available. And sometimes those best tools are just our fingers. All right, this is coming together pretty well. I'm going to try to add a handle. All right, I'm not going to just use a slab though, because that usually looks a little, just isn't shaped well. So I'm going to roll in my hands, or you can roll on the table. This doesn't have to be a huge handle. It's not a very big creamer, right? So you don't have to use a lot. And what I'm doing is just kind of rolling it in my hand so it's nice and even. And then I'm going to use my rib. If I wanted to, I could make that kind of a spine down the center, or I could have it just be rounded. It's really up to you, but I really want to get those edges nice and even. All right, and then when I go to attach this, I can cut a bevel. Yeah, there we go. And again, I'm going to use a little slip. And I can attach that on right there. Make sure you line it up with that spout, and then my bottom of my handle can get attached like that. And I just have to work on that just a little bit. So I can work a little slip into this area, make sure this is attached down here, maybe work a little bit more slip in there. And then use my sponge to clean up anything that doesn't look exact. And the beautiful thing about working with slabs in this way, I want to also take care of that inside, is that you can make these things fairly quickly, almost as fast as you could if you were making it on the wheel. Let me shape that just a little bit more. There we go. So that would be one. Now, another way that we can make a bigger picture is by using the tar paper. You can see here I took the same exact shape I used on this one, maybe with a more angled spout, and I cut out a pattern of tar paper. Don't start by cutting your pattern on the tar paper. Start by cutting your pattern on regular paper, as I did here, and then trace it on to the tar paper, because the tar paper is something that can't really be recycled. And you can see I'm getting this fairly wet. Don't just sponge it on, really drench it. And the thing about the tar paper that's a little bit different than the garden paper is that you can really firmly attach it to your slab. So now I'm going to clean that off. I'm actually going to use the roller again. I don't want my hands getting in the way, so I'm moving them off to the on top. And now I can take this and put that on. I'm going to make sure that I kind of use a sponge to remove any excess water. Make sure there's no pockets of air. And I'm going to actually really attach that on. And you may be thinking that my texture that I just added on is going to disappear, but the tar paper does a really great job of protecting it for the most part. And the tar paper, other great things that you can do with the tar paper is you can make a pattern that you can use for a really long time to come. So it's not something you use and then just throw it away. You can make more than one of something. And I think that is kind of a great part about it. You can make a few, make a different pattern and come back to it a year later and that pattern is still in good shape. All right, now I'm gonna lift this up. Oh, not completely stuck down. I've got to get that stuck down just a little bit better. I think it's because my table is a little bit wet. Now it's a little bit. All right. It is a little wet. All right. So now I'm going to clean up this. And I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the ewer, except that I can see that my bottom is a little crooked, so I'm going to fix that. I did have some canvas here before, and that works much better. So if you're in my class, you had canvas in your toolkit. So I'm going to cut this side carefully, beveling. And on this side, I'm going to lift it and bevel the other way. And I'm going to bevel the bottom. So you can make a lot of different shapes, but the key is to kind of figure that out ahead of time, what kind of shape you're going for. I'm going to clean up that edge. That tar paper does a great job of really supporting that while I do this. And I'm going to add some slip onto that edge where I'm going to be connecting it immediately. And the tar paper gives it support, so I can actually lift and work with it right away, pretty much. It doesn't bend as easy though, so you do have to be really careful as you're doing this. Right. So I kind of start by tacking it together with my fingers, and then I'll come back in with my rib. And I'm going to do that inside and out, making sure it's really well connected on both sides. If you wanted to, you could even come in with your paddle to make sure it's really well connected. And then I can work on bending the spout. We want it to be very close to the shape it's going to be once we take the tar paper off. We'll take the tar paper off in the next video, and I will show you how to clean up your seams and how to clean up your edges. But for now, get it to a really good stopping place, and then we'll add on a foot, our bottom, and also clean up the edges and add on a larger handle on this one. And on the next one, in the next video, I'll also show you how to make a dart right here so that you can add in a handle that has kind of a recessed area instead of straight up and down. All right, so I'll see you in the next video. For now, practice, make your smaller patterns that you can use. I'd say garden paper for the smaller forms, tar paper for the taller forms. And remember, these little ones act as like a trial for your bigger ones. So you're kind of getting in the habit of trying something small and then seeing how it looks visually and then making it on a larger scale. So that's kind of a great habit to get into early on. And your extra slabs or pieces of clay, just take those and wedge those up and put those back into your bag while they're still wet. Don't leave them out and let them dry. All right, I'll see you in the next video.